My mic. There we go. A little bit of technical difficulties on my end. Hey, welcome back to another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Evan. Unfortunately, it's just me today. Evan is off sick, so you guys are stuck with my lovely voice to do the intro. I'm actually pretty pumped about today's show. Corey Berrier is coming in hot and heavy into the HVAC space. I know that he's been in the trades for quite some time, I believe over 26 years, making a name for himself in the HVAC industry. I was actually had a chance to chat with him on his podcast. I want to say that was maybe a month and a half ago. Phenomenal individual in terms of what he does. He's a seasoned sales and business expert, over 25 years experience. He chairs the North Carolina Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association. Well-respected speaker in the industry. He's also a best-selling author of the 9 Simple Steps to Sell More Shit, and also the host of the Successful Life podcast. Fascinating background in terms of his journey into the trades, why he ventured into coaching, some of the struggles and challenges he's encountered in his life to get to where he's at today, how he turned it around, that and more on today's episode. But today's episode would not be possible, of course, without our sponsors. So first and foremost, and these are in no particular order, by the way, we have Sera Systems, CHIIRP, as well as Profit Rocket. Sera Systems is a field service management software that really focuses on profitability. One thing that I really like is their job time efficiency in real time. And it's also dynamic dispatching online, which is also super cool. Sera users have been known to show an average increase of 52% of revenue within the first 6 months and more than doubling their profits. Check out sales.sera.tech/HVAC revealed. The other sponsor, CHIIRP, is an ultimate automation toolbox. They have a direct integration too with tools like Service Titan, House Call Pro, Jobber, Sera. And what I mean by direct integration, drop-down menus. They have automated text messages, ringless voicemails, rehash programs, getting you more Google reviews. The list goes on and on and on. You can actually get 30% or 25% rather off your first 3 months by going to chirp.com/HSSR. And last but certainly not least is the Profit Rocket blueprint. Look, if you want to know how Victor Rancour scaled his business from $0 to $40 million in 4 short years, I'm hoping I'm getting this right. I don't quite have the readout. My apologies if I'm incorrect or misspoken on any of this. He has the Call Profit Rocket blueprint where he gives you all the tools, all the secrets of everything that he has learned in business to rapid fire it off. You want to check that out at the callprofitrocket.com if you need help with your business of any size. Now, without further ado, let's get into her.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to HVAC Success Secrets Revealed, a show where we interview industry leaders and disruptors, revealing the success secrets to create and unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Now your hosts, Thaddeus and Evan.
Hey, Corey. Thanks for joining us today, my friend.
What's up, my man? How are you?
I am doing well. A little tired having the new baby at home. That's a week old. So between my half a brain and your ADHD brain, it's gonna be a hell of an episode, I think.
I would agree with that.
Well, cheers. We're both probably having waters today. I know that you are sober of 13 and a half years, and I'm just too tired to even fathom having a drink right now.
Well, I'm not that tired, but I can't fathom having a drink either. So I'm right there with you.
There we go. So, well, thanks for taking the time. I do want to dive right into the meat and potatoes. I know that you had an interesting journey into the trade. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
Yeah, so I got into the trades. I started working with a plumbing company. It was the first company I worked with. And by accident, I started working with the sales team and the technicians. And what I quickly realized is, dude, everybody in the trades is just like me. Like everybody, I would say a good 85% of the people that I've worked with, maybe closer to 90, have some sort of ADHD, right? Mm-hmm. It's so common. And the reason that obviously is important to me is because I have ADHD. And when you have two people, it could go one of two ways. It could go completely sideways or all over the place. Or if you collaborate together, you can see the things and you'll probably, do you have ADHD?
Not diagnosed, but I'm sure that I probably have some form of something or other.
Yeah. So like lots of times I can see 4 or 5 steps ahead of whatever you need to do, right? I can't necessarily see that for myself, but I can see it for you, which sounds completely weird, right? But which makes me a good consultant, a good coach.
Well, it's like a superpower.
100%. Yeah. If it's used right. You know what I mean? But yeah.
So, I mean, I guess if somebody's struggling with ADHD, where do they begin? I mean, well, I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can go with this. I mean, let's back up, the very beginning. How did you recognize this? I mean, I think you were pretty young when it happened, but if there's a parent whose child is maybe dealing with that, or you yourself might have undiagnosed ADHD, how would one go about discovering that?
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. I'm really glad you asked that. So I took medicine since I was 8 years old, right? I'm just turned 45 years old, so whatever that number is. Up until about 2 years, less than 2 years ago, probably a year and a half ago, I was finishing up my book, and I wanted to put an area about ADHD in there because I think it's important for people to understand why our brains work the way they do. So I interviewed 54 ADHD professionals before I put that part in my book. And the reason, so in that journey, I realized like why I forget my AirPods everywhere, why I'll start a text message and it'll be 24 hours before I go back to the text message, but I'm pissed at you because you haven't written me back, right? Or I look at the text message and I think, okay, yeah, I got that, but I never sent the message back to you, right? And I understand now why these things happen. Like we have short-term memory, and it's not necessarily the same for everybody, but lots of times what happens is our brains run super fast and we think of multiple things, and it's hard to focus on things that are not exciting. And so if you think about school, lots of times people would say, well, it calms them down or they can't focus. But the reality is we can focus really well if we want to focus on it. If it's something we're interested in, we're dialed completely in. I'll give you a perfect example, this ChatGPT. Like I've just drowned myself in this information. And so in finding all this stuff out, it made me realize like I've been taking medicine for years and I had no idea. Like I really thought the medicine that I took as a kid led me to my drug and alcohol abuse. I was convinced that was the case. But the truth is, after further investigation, if I hadn't been on that medication, it would have been way worse. And that seems weird because the medication is basically an amphetamine, right? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. One of the things, hard to focus on things that are not exciting. And running a business, and I mean, most of the people that listen to the show are, for the most part, business owners. I'm sure that there's sales professionals and other individuals too. I don't want to exclude you if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not a business owner. I think it kind of goes with everybody in every role, any position that somebody has. But speaking more over to business owners, there's always shit that we don't like to do on a day-by-day basis. If you can't get excited about it, to be able to get it done, oftentimes it goes by the wayside, but the things that are needing to get done, what do you say to somebody that, maybe doesn't have ADHD, but they're just struggling to focus on the non-exciting, the non-sexy parts about running a business?
I would tell you to find someone that can do that job for you, because most likely, if you're like me, I'll just push it off, right? It'll always be at the bottom of the list. If I don't want to do it, it will always be at the bottom of the list, and I may not get to it forever, right? And so sometimes that's really important stuff. And lots of times our brains don't recognize that boring, mundane task is something that you have to do in order to get to the end goal. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I explain that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I was going to tell you one other thing. You mentioned kids.
Yep.
Like I'm sure, well, I don't know this, but when you were a kid, did you hear very many girls having ADHD?
No.
Right. So when this whole thing started, boys, it was a boy kind of syndrome, if you will.
Yep.
Girls are overlooked and women are overlooked because their symptoms are different. And so I wanted to bring this up because a lot of women, even in their 30s, in fact, most women are in their 30s when they get diagnosed, typically after they have a baby. As you can imagine right now, how an Adderall would probably help you out tremendously. Right? I mean, I'm just being honest. So if you think about that, the characteristics are different. So women talk a lot if they have ADHD, and boys are all over the place. Like girls are organized, they talk a lot. Boys all over the place, unorganized. So that's the difference. I just wanted to point that out because you brought up the kid thing.
Right. Well, don't all women talk a lot? Especially when a group of women get together. No, I'm kidding.
You baited me into that one.
Right. I think you baited yourself into that one. No, I couldn't resist it. It was there. I'll take a jab at that. So now I completely lost where I was going to go with the next question. 30-year-old, right? You mentioned, women that are in their 30s, and I'm sure that there are men that are in their 30s who have this revelation as well. If they're like, well, fuck, maybe I have ADHD. Where do they begin?
Look, I'm not a doctor, so I would suggest going to see somebody that you can trust and be honest with them. And look, I'll tell you you also need to tell them if you're drinking, right? If you're drinking a lot. And look, let's just be honest. There's a lot of people in our industry that, that struggle with alcohol and with drugs. And so if you do have ADHD and you're drinking all the time, you got to tell the doctor that stuff, because it could be, maybe not as much the ADHD as it could be something else. And I'm not saying that because I'm sober. I'm just telling you my experience. Mm-hmm. But you asked me earlier what a business owner would do if they had ADHD and they were all over the place and they were trying to, they've got all the balls in the air, but they keep putting stuff off. Always hire someone. And sometimes it's even beneficial to hire one person for just the personal stuff that you have to get done, right? And it sounds silly. That's like, oh, well, why would I have a personal assistant? Because you can be twice as productive, because you won't be bogged down by the things that you absolutely don't want to do. Anyway, I just wanted to.
No, well, that's actually, it's a good thing, because I recently been listening to Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Phenomenal book, by the way. Any business owner, I think, should be like required reading if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to run a business. So one of the exercises that I've been doing prior to going on pat leave for 2 weeks with the newborn baby is I actually have this list here I'm writing this down manually of all my tasks that I do on a day-by-day basis. And if I switch tasks, I write it down. Anything that I do. Now here's and it's like, it's a sheet, right? It's a book, and I've got quite a bit on here. I did it for a day and I was like, oh shit, there's lots of things that I shouldn't be doing with my time. But here's the thing. And so when you do it, you actually put a dollar value behind it, right? So this is actually a good task. If somebody's like, well, I don't want to do this task. Well, great. Find somebody who can do that, right? Not how can you get it? Who can you hire that can actually replace that task? But start with a list somewhere. Write this down. Write down every single task and then put a value marker behind that. So something like emails, probably a $1 sign behind it, right? On a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being the highest, right? I mean, right. How many entrepreneurs should be in their own inbox, in my opinion? Very, very. And then this is a tough thing to get rid of too, right? Like I'm going through this right now with my system. Like, got to outsource my inbox, and you got to like let them handle some of that shit. Yes, right. But there's also going to be tasks that are $2 signs and $3 signs and $4 signs. Well, once you have identified that, now you audit that, and you can create things to be able to get people to take those off your plate, and then you only focus on your $4 signs.
I agree.
Right. And that's how you hire somebody for your skills.
Yeah, 100%. I'll tell you, one of the things that, and I don't do this consistently, but I'll tell you, my buddy Callie is the one that told me he also has ADHD, and he writes down the one thing he's working on, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever the one thing is. And if he gets pulled away from the computer, then he writes it on a note, a sticky note, the one thing. And so that actually works well for me when I use it. So my thing with the list that you just had, as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, Jesus, like that I think my brain would go all over the place looking at all these things and would just shut down. You know what I mean?
Yep. And this is more identifying your tasks that you do, right? In a day-by-day basis, right? And so like focusing, and so like if you're doing those, that's what that's about. You know, the one thing, Gary Keller, I know that's the one thing, the 411, where you focus on your top priorities for the week, right? You identify that, and you have to do that before you can focus on anything else. Is that kind of what you're talking about with the one thing?
Well, it's really just like if let's just say that I'm in the middle of writing an email, right? And I get a phone call and I have to walk away from the computer. I need to write down, you are writing the email. Like as simple as one thing, you are writing the email to that, whatever.
Right.
And then I can look at that sticky note and I know exactly what I need to do.
Right.
Opposed to the 20 tabs I have open. Right.
I have 3 open right now, so I'm actually doing pretty good. So I know some people have like 100 tabs across the top. I'm like, how do you like? You probably use like 4 of your 50 tabs that you have open. So
right, you just never know. You just might need that other tab, so you might as well at least leave it open. Right,
right, right.
It's mind numbing for somebody with ADHD.
I can only imagine. You know, it's. I mean, mine is more so the OCD part of things, right? And that's like I hate having an inbox that has unread emails or that has a lot of emails in there. Like I want to get it in, I want to get it read and responded to and filtered away into a file folder. So I like the 0 inbox, right? One topic I want to get into, and I know you've mentioned it a couple times, and it's something that not a lot of people talk about on podcasts, not a lot of people talk about within the industry, but you had mentioned it that it is a big thing. It's just hidden, is drug and alcohol abuse within the trades specifically. And I don't think it's just the trades, by the way. I'm not painting the one brush, everybody blue collar with that brush. Look, there's lots of white collar that has drugs and alcohol abuse as well. It's kind of rampant everywhere. Walk us through your journey. I know that you're an open book when it comes to that. Perhaps your story might be able to inspire somebody else. You said nothing was off. You said nothing was off.
100%, dude. It's wild because you'll understand why it's wild. So I've had multiple DUIs. That I guess that's part of anybody's story. It winds up in AA just about. I got sober on October 12th, 2009. And I got sober in AA. It is what it is. Like it got me to a place where I didn't feel like I needed AA anymore. And so they talk about this in the book, and this was 6.5 years in, I think that's about right. And so the last 7 years up until recently, I have not been going to AA. And this part, you'll totally understand. The shift happened when I started watching Tony Robbins, right? And so if you think about, I don't know if you know much about the 12 steps, but the truth of the matter is personal development programs are the same thing as the 12 steps, right? It's just a little bit different words. And so what I latched onto, or what my brain caught onto, was the I am part, right? If I say I am an alcoholic, that means I keep saying that I'm broken, right? And that's what played in my head. And so I convinced myself, and this is, I'll start this out by saying, don't believe everything you think, because I convinced myself that I didn't need AA anymore. The issue with that is, the 12th step is working with others, helping another alcoholic like somebody helped you. I didn't have that step. So you can't expect to have the results of the 12 steps if you don't work all 12 steps. And so keep in mind, I didn't realize the shift was happening. I didn't realize that I had shifted. I mean, obviously I realized I'd stopped going to meetings, but the truth is I started a meeting. And I wound up being like the constant chairperson of the meeting, not because I chose to be that person. It just happened that way. And so for somebody like me, that's no good, right? I don't need to be the chairperson every time for an AA meeting. That's not what it's there for. And so my ego, I just got too big, right? My ego just got too big. And I just said, well, I don't need it anymore. I convinced myself I didn't. So as of recently, I was talking to at RoofCon, whenever that was, back in October, November, was talking to a gentleman named Eric Obramp, and he's in recovery. He runs a group called Roofers in Recovery. And I was telling him the story, and he said, you know, Corey, he said, maybe this is not about you. And I went, man, he's right. He's 100% right. I've made it all about me. It's the whole shit's been about me. And the problem with that is, like, you know, I built a life that took me away from AA, and slowly but surely I've chipped away at different areas of my life. I've done some great things. I've done some really shitty things, but I've been this weird place. And it's been difficult until recently. As soon as, like, he told me that on, I think it was a Saturday night, that next day I went to a meeting and I picked up a sponsee the second meeting, and I've been to a meeting almost every day since. And I have started reworking the steps, because the truth of the matter is I feel like I'm just now coming back in, and I'm just being completely transparent with you. And what I mean by that is, you know, I have zero desire to pick up a drink. Like, if I was ever going to pick up a drink, it'd been in the last 6.5 years, because most people don't make it back. And I got lucky, I guess. I don't know what you call it. I don't really know. I don't know how I made it through. Completely transparent. I don't know how I made it through, but I have made it through, and realize at this point that, like, it wasn't AA. It was my relationship with God is what was missing. And so AA is the bridge to my relationship to God. And so I have to have that. I'm almost getting emotional. I have to have that, right? Or things don't work out, or things don't work out the way I want them to. And I like when things work out the way I want them to. And so I have to do the work if I want the result. That was a long ass answer, but that's where I'm at.
Hey, I love long answers. It was deep. It was emotional. I could feel it. You know, when you're having that conversation with somebody, and you can feel like your hair rising a little bit, and just the power and the impact behind it. Like, that's what happened there. You know, for me, I like the I am part. You know, I am, and you really define yourself by the words that you say to yourself. Think about affirmations. And you look at a lot of the self-help stuff is all you talk about affirmations, right? It's also something that doesn't come easy. Right. I'm going to liken this to something that isn't like drugs and alcohol. It's sleep deprivation. Right. And people have a tough time falling asleep or staying asleep. Right. Well, one of the things that a person can do is, well, you tell yourself, I'm going to have a great sleep. I'm going to fall asleep. I'm rested. I'm relaxed. Right. And you say that, or whatever your moniker is to help you sleep, but it's not going to happen night one. Right. It's not going to happen night two. People give up by night three because, like, oh, what I'm saying doesn't work. Well, no, stick with it. Right. 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, 75 days, you know. One thing that I want to ask, so if somebody's listening to this, they're like, maybe that's me. Maybe I have an alcohol problem. Maybe I have a drug problem. They don't know, or they can't admit it to themselves, or they don't know the next step to take. Where do they go? What advice would you give somebody who might be living in denial?
I think you've got to look at what is going on in your life. If you're having the question of whether you're an alcoholic or not, most likely, sorry, my screen went berserk here and I lost you.
Good.
You know, what was I saying? I told you it was going to happen.
Yeah, you did actually. So the question is, if somebody, you know, struggling with, you know, the denial about drugs and alcohol, you know, where do they go? How do they admit it to themselves to be able to seek the answers that they so choose or need to be able to get over it?
So, you know, I've already mentioned the program that I'm a part of. You know, it's not easy walking those doors. It's not easy looking in the mirror and saying, like, my life's a wreck, or my marriage is falling apart, or my business is falling apart, or all the things that are happening most likely in your life, if you're looking in the mirror, asking yourself, do I have a drinking problem? And so I would just encourage you to, like, it's an anonymous program for a reason, right? I can tell you that I was there. I can't tell you who else was there. And look, dude, there's people in there of all walks of life. Mm-hmm. And guess what? You are absolutely going to feel very different when you walk in that room. You're going to feel like everybody's staring at you. You're going to feel like everybody's judging you. You're going to feel like everybody thinks you're a complete loser. But the issue that's completely opposite than that. Like, people have empathy for people that are struggling, right? They just do. At least they do in there. And it could save your life walking in that room. It saved, I would argue it probably saved my life this time. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it could have turned out because I chose not to take that route. So right. It's not easy, Evan, but there's I'll give you a great example. There's a Twitter Spaces. I don't know. Do you use Twitter Spaces at all?
No.
I don't really either, but there was a recovery one. So I just popped in. I'm like, oh, okay, let's just check it out. What I found interesting about it, if I were a new and I had questions about alcohol, or if I was an alcoholic, that'd be the first place I would go, because nobody knows who you are because it's just right. Your voice. I mean, they can see right. Your picture, but yep. It's still really anonymous. But here's the other thing. You get to hear basically a closed, meeting inside of that room, because the people that are talking just like we're inside that room. Mm-hmm. And so it was really powerful because you can't get that anywhere else on earth. You can't get the inside of a closed meeting unless you are there for that reason, right? So it really, I think it's super cool. I've only done it, I've only been in this room once, but I'm going to do every Sunday because I think it's an opportunity for people to come in and listen and, take what you want from it, right? Mm-hmm. So.
No, the other thing too is if it's on Twitter and you want to remain anonymous, so just create a fake throwaway Twitter account, walk yourself right in, right? I think the toughest part for a lot of people is admitting that they have a problem. And then the second toughest part is finding a solution and finding somebody to help them with that problem. Especially when it comes to drugs and alcohol, more specifically alcohol. It's one of the most socially acceptable drugs that gets abused. And I'm saying that as I've got, a bunch of whiskey, behind me. But it also starts with examining what's your relationship like with alcohol. I can't remember where I read it or where I saw it. Might have just been on my interwebs travels of saying, okay, well, what is your relationship with alcohol? That's a great question to start. Are you needing it as a crutch? Are you needing it to have a social conversation? Are you using it as a stress reducer? Or do you just simply enjoy the odd glass every now and again of whatever your poison is, right? And analyzing that relationship is going to give you that healthiest start from it. But on that road to recovery is probably also analyzing what your relationship is with it too, right? Because now you can have those open dialogues, open conversations about it. So, that was a deep conversation. I really appreciate you opening up. Not a lot of people talk about those sorts of things. So I want to be the first to thank you for that. Our conversation is not done, by the way. We're going to shift gears away from this because this is, I wanted to get into it. I didn't think we were going to get into it this soon into the show, into the episode, but we did. I will say this, and I already know that you're probably going to give me permission. I haven't asked, but if anybody does want to reach out, if they are struggling, if they do want to have a conversation, simply just email Corey at CoreyBerrier.com, right? If you want to create a fake Gmail account and email it from him from there so you can remain anonymous, he will be already willing to help you because he's already given back to his AA community and AA friends to be able to help other people, get sober and elevate their lives. So Any final thoughts on that, or are you ready to shift some gears?
We can certainly shift. I would just encourage you. If anybody does want to reach out, that was exactly what I was going to say. So you've already said it. Go ahead.
Perfect. All right. So random question generator is the perfect segue. I love this part of the show because this random question has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about. I haven't even read what the random questions are, and I'm not going to flip over. I just know there's 4 of them. So you get to choose which question you want. You don't get to know the question in advance. You just get to choose a number, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Which door do you want to open up? 3? All right. Question 3. If you could have only one food on a deserted island forever, desert island or deserted island?
I'd say deserted.
Deserted. All right. If you could have only one food on a deserted island forever, what would it be?
Steak.
Oh, medium rare?
Medium rare.
Perfect. Good answer.
Smoked.
Ooh.
Smoked.
Do you cold smoke the steak first and then cook it on the barbecue, or you just cook it straight in the smoker?
Straight in the smoker. What do you mean cold? What do you mean by that?
So cold smoke. So I have a smoker, and I like to smoke meat. So cold smoke is actually it's like a little tray. It looks like a little maze, and it goes around in a square, and you put your wood sawdust in there, and then you light it, and it kind of smolders and it smokes. But there's no heat, or there is a little bit because it's smoldering. But your food goes up higher, so you can actually smoke cheese. I smoked tomatoes and I smoked cheese once, and then we put it on top with I think it was like a blue cheese dressing on top of like a salad wedge with bacon, and it was like absolutely wonderful because the tomatoes and the cheese were smoked. Right? You can so there's no heat behind it, so you can actually take, and so I'll actually take like a whole chicken leg, the thigh and the breast. I'll cold smoke it for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I'll throw it on the barbecue and I'll slow cook it for 45 minutes, and it's heaven. Same thing with steak, cold smoke it, no heat, and then you cook it for your 4 minutes aside, or 5 minutes aside, depending on how thick your steak is, to get your medium rare.
Yeah. I've literally never heard of that. I don't know how, but I have never heard of that. So is it like, okay, so is it like it's pellet, like the pellet sawdust, you mean? It's not the pellet sawdust. So like if you have like the Traeger, for example, right, you dump the pellets in and that's what heats up your barbecue, and that's what cooks everything. Right. So this is it's just sawdust. Like it's the equivalent of sawdust, but you can get like different flavors. Like you can get a cherry, you can get a hickory, you can get a mesquite in there, and you light it up, and it creates the smoke inside your chamber. Right. And so I just have a Bradley digital smoker because that's what I got as a gift. The Traegers are phenomenal. I definitely love a Traeger down the road, but so I have a vertical, what the hell is it called? Jesus, I don't know.
It's not digital?
Yeah, it's digital Bluetooth, but it's stack up. Yeah,
it's probably like a Bradley digital smoker. They have like a 4 rack and a 6 rack. Anyways, I'll send you the cold smoke stuff after the show. I'll send you some info on that to get into that. So, all right, let's dive back into what you guys do, Sales CEO, over at CoreyBerrier.com, in terms of what it is that you guys do. I know that one of the big things is revolutionizing your business with some of the AI components and sales coaching, et cetera. So walk us through what you're doing to help businesses out from an AI standpoint.
All right. So I can't go into a super amount of detail with some of it, but here's what I want you to think about. So we talked a little bit about using Chat GPT. I'll start there because people are probably more familiar with what that is. Mm-hmm. So, and I can actually tie this together with the ADHD. So one of the things that I found that works for me and works for anybody that I've told to use it this way. If you have to explain something, let's just use a technician to a client. If you have to explain something to a client, not standing in front of the client, let's just pretend you just started. You're brand new. You've run up on something that maybe you can't explain, or in anything in life for that matter. What I do is I will put it in. I will write it up the way my brain says it, and then I'll have it spit it back out. And what that does, it gives me a succinct way to explain whatever it is I have in my head, but so you'll understand. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you're, and the side effect of that is you're retraining your brain to think like you're reading, right?
Right.
So that's where I've used it personally, and that's where I encourage a lot of people to use it. Now, you could use this for titles, right? Podcast titles, YouTube titles. You could use it for, as we talked about, ad copy. However, you could do it a million different things. And if you're, if you're a contractor that doesn't, that maybe you don't outsource your marketing, maybe you're just starting out, maybe you just haven't figured the marketing side out. This could be an option, not for you to do your marketing, but to at least get it to where you're legible, right? To where, it looks professional. And you really can do a lot with like SEO, right? You can pull a lot of SEO stuff, which obviously helps. And then you want me to stop there?
No, you can keep going.
Okay. So another area is like sentiment analysis. And so do you know what sentiment analysis is?
I have a rough idea, but I feel like you're going to explain it for the sake of our audience and our listeners in case they don't know.
Yeah. So imagine if you were be able to determine the emotion of the call, right? Of the CSR call or the or the customer for that matter, right? You can pick up the emotion of how the call went. In other words, they can getting a little bit. So you can sentiment analysis based on keywords. If I program every time Evan says X, Y, or Z, then it will give me the emotion of X, Y, or Z. Did I break it down? It's like kind of simple enough. It's been around for 40 years, dude. It's been around for forever. But it's weird because I don't know too many people that use it other than really big companies, right? Big data companies. But now with open AI, there's ways that you can do this. Well, there's companies out there that do this, right? I mean, some marketing companies offer stuff like this. At least I believe they do. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So where should we go from here? Got to take a sip of water.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, I know the one thing you mentioned, using it if you don't have the marketing. I mean, I look at, do you have more time or do you have more money, right? Time versus money. That's that paradox shift or in the paradigm, saying, okay, well, I've got more time than I have money. So maybe I can't hire a great marketing company such as On Purpose Media, which by the way, onpurposemedia.ca, they're the sponsors of the Random Question Generator. So if your home services HVAC marketing sucks, go to onpurposemedia.ca. We'll fix you up the right way. Forgot about that little plug.
That was good.
Right? Usually do that before the Random Question Generator. We'll do that now. So, but you look at that, right? And you are right. You could help clean up those things. The only caution that I have from a marketing side of things is the actual full content that you use on your website directly generated from AI can be flagged. I mean, Google hasn't outright said it, but they have said it in enough ways in like their Google's aloofness of how they operate and they do their things, right? Of that, if you have a lot of AI content, you could be punished, right? And you could be moved down the rankings. And then it's an uphill battle to be able to get that back based off of what you've done. So just a caution on that. So from a marketing side of things, you can use it from a lot of different places to help augment what you need to do to be able to get you the right ideas the right way.
So I'm gonna drop a little bit more vulnerability on you. So I not because of AI, but I'll just tell you, the gentleman that did my website, as you probably can see, Sales CEO is not listed a ton of places anymore. The reason for that is because this is just me being a dumbass. There is a site called The Sales CEO. I didn't fucking know that, right? I set this up years ago. And most likely I was just too ignorant to realize that, okay, like you can't set this up. Right. We know now that makes zero sense why I did that. But I didn't set it up as The Sales CEO. I set it up as Sales CEO. Well, on all of my copy on my website, it said copyright The Sales CEO. That is not me. That is not my company. That has nothing to do with me. And so I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. And so all of a sudden one day, Google, I don't know, it's called like Google My Business, what it was called then. Google Business, it vanished, right? And I'm like, I don't understand. I like it says it flagged it. I don't understand how it flagged anything. I didn't put anything, I didn't do anything. And so I searched for months trying to figure out how to fix this problem. I still haven't fixed the problem. However, the same thing could happen if you, like you just said, and that's a real-time example of exactly the same thing that would happen to you. And it's a fucking nightmare. So
yeah, one wrong step can cause a small microcosm of cascading effects, right? So
so many,
right?
So many.
So if somebody has sentiment analysis, they're looking back and they can analyze the emotions of a call. How can they leverage and utilize that within their business to get better?
That's a fantastic question. So imagine, and this can be done, imagine if you're running a company, I don't know, 700 people, right? Let's say the size of Tommy Mello's company. And let's pretend that they use, well, obviously they use some sort of internal messaging, whether it's Slack or whether it's Teams, whatever. So imagine being able, and keep in mind, this is from a positive culture standpoint. Okay. This is not a spy standpoint. And we know, Tommy, I'll use him as an example because he's a good example of somebody that would not abuse this, what I'm getting ready to tell you.
Correct.
So you can deploy that inside of whatever internal messaging you have and set it up like I was explaining earlier, keywords, whatever you choose, you want to set it up as. And ultimately that would, you would eliminate quiet quitters, or you would maybe not eliminate, but you would certainly have a better grasp on people getting ready to quit. You'd have a better grasp on if your employees are talking shit about you, right? You could also use this from a customer data standpoint, right? Because if you go in and do it inside of the internal messaging is connected with everything else. So now you could run that same analysis inside the customer database and get an idea of how the customers are talking to your people, right? You could figure out one, like here's a great example, a simple example. You could have it flag an emergency call or, a sale. Those are two different calls. And you don't want the technician to go, you don't want your best technician going to a maintenance call. I said emergency call, but I meant maintenance call. You got it, but you understand what I'm saying. So that's just one quick example. Do you see, Does that make sense? All right.
So I guess how does I know we can't get quite too into the details and into the weeds of things, but how would somebody go about utilizing sentiment analysis within their business?
Well, think about it like this. Okay. So if you have, let's say sales are down, sales have taken a dip and you're not really sure why. You could run any keywords you want to figure out what those things are. And now with AI, it's easier to do than what it used to be. Right. So now you can just plug in, for example, you could say, all right, how many times are people calling for maintenance calls? How many times are people calling for emergency calls? And you'd have that information pretty quickly. Right. And so you could figure out if you're selling more hot water heaters of a certain brand and you want to know that stuff immediately, that stuff would be available. Does that make sense? So pretty much any information that you want to know out of your internal system, you can figure out quickly. And then you can use that same data to sharpen like the CSR calls, right? Think about that. If you can see the emotion throughout the CSR call and you see it 3/4 of at the 3/4 spot, Jan is falling off the boat on Friday. You can immediately figure that out by setting an alert that if certain number of calls go to 75%, you get an alert, right? That's kind of probably, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep. So is it listening to the calls, creating a transcript, putting them in through AI to be able to analyze the words, or is it listening to the sounds to analyze tonality? What's happening there?
It's both, actually. So the calls obviously are recorded. The transcripts are that you would have the downloaded transcripts. So through, I'm not the person that deploys this shit, so I can't get into the technicalities of how it actually works. But what I do know is I forgot what you asked me.
It's all good. So normally that happens to me a lot in the middle of a thought, and that same thing, right? I get thinking about 5 steps ahead. Now I'm gonna try to remember the question that I asked.
I know I was telling you about the the emotion, right? So
yeah, how does it work, right? How does it analyze listening to calls, etc.? That's the notes.
Yeah.
Written down.
So, gotcha. So strictly not strictly through keywords, but there's multiple data points that they use, and I couldn't begin to go through the list of those. But like social listening, emotional listening, all of that stuff is programmed in, right? Yeah, I don't know how it works, but it's fucking badass.
Right. So, I mean, that's the AI component of things, right? It analyzes it, listens to tonality, listen to words that are going to say. It spits out a score, whether it's a smiley face, neutral face, sad face, whatever your rankings are. You then go to work on coaching to say, hey, or you get the report, be like, oh shit, this person had a lot of neutral faces. Well, maybe let's listen to some calls, do some desk alongs and coach them. Is that kind of, is that where you guys come in? And so now that you have the data, now Corey and team from, Corey Berrier and the sales CEO come in and say, hey, here's what is happening. Not you,
there's
but
no the.
Team.
There's no the. Remember, don't say the.
Right. So sales CEO from, that's tough to say without the.
Trust me, right? I know.
I'm like, fuck, how does my brain work on that? I'm working on half speed here with a newborn, but so basically then you guys come in and you're like, all right, here's the results of these things. Let's listen to some of this shit. Let's go back. Let's figure it out. Let's do some coaching.
Right. Because the data's there, right? The data's there, right?
Yep.
It's your data, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's pretty telling.
Yeah, well, I'd be kind of scared to hear it on myself in some of our sales calls or whatever, right? But it'd be fascinating. I would like to hear it and like to see it and see how that works. I guess it's shifting into, from a coaching to a CSR point of view, because this is where a lot of it is. It's based on the phone. Not necessarily. I mean, yeah, you could probably somehow leverage this in the field. I wouldn't know how. What are some of the biggest issues that you see or biggest mistakes that you see CSRs make?
I don't know that it's the CSRs making the mistakes. I think it's them not being trained, and I think there's zero chance. I thought there's no thinking about it. It's 100% that they're not being trained. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people that are getting trained, but the people that I work with, they need training because, look, just to be honest, like the business owner, it's not their job. It shouldn't be their job to train the CSRs. You should be doing other things than that if you have a business with CSRs. Your CSR manager is, that's on you to decide that person, and you should have somebody that's going to help motivate the team, and you should also make sure that you're paying them accordingly, right? I believe in pay for performance. I don't believe, if you pay somebody $20 an hour, you're going to get $20 an hour worth of work out of them. If there's incentive to do better, it works for me. I'll tell you that. And it works for most people. Right. Most people want to win, and most people want to make more money. And if you can give them the avenue to do that, they're going to really want to keep coming back to work. And guess what? Then they're going to tell all their friends that they work at a cool ass place that gives them bonuses and gives them all these things. And who wins in that situation? Everybody.
Yep. The people in the business, and guess what? The customers, because the people are happy. People are happy. They treat the customers great.
100%.
Right. Use Tommy Mello as an example. He's like, why do you charge so much? That's a ripoff. You're ripping off the customers. He's like, well, no, look at how many people earn $100,000 per year in my business. Look at the life that they'd be able to get. Look at what I can be able to do for them. Look at what I can be able to do for my team. Right. And maybe I is the wrong word there, but what his business is able to do for the people that work there. And he gives them an actual life, but yet you're sitting there paying your people $50,000 per year and half that, and they're hating their lives. Well, maybe you're ripping your people off. Right.
I think it's a mindset, I think that's 100%. A mindset problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Where would you say the biggest lack of training is for a CSR?
Role play for 100%. role play. That's absolutely.
Yep. So
But
companies
it's uncomfortable. Well, it's
right.
uncomfortable.
Right.
Nobody wants to role play, because especially if they work for the company, because it's uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable for the person that's having to do it, like facilitate it. It's uncomfortable for the employees. And most of the time, if you've got somebody inside the business doing it, which most people don't, then it's probably not that effective, because if that makes any sense, it's just like, it's just like if I tell you that the sky is blue and your wife tells you the sky is blue, you might see it if I tell you the sky is blue, but your wife's been telling you it's blue for the last 12 years. And you're like, oh yeah, Corey said it looked blue, right? I don't know why that happens, but it does. It's the same difference, right?
That makes sense. So if role playing isn't in the business, somebody doesn't have that as part of it, and they're worried about their CSRs and creating this whole role playing part of things, where would somebody start to be able to bring it into the business and make it a little bit more comfortable for people to do?
Well, I think regular training. I think you should. I think you should have people call in and role play with them as a customer, right? Because here's what's happening. When you bring somebody new in and you don't train them the way they need to be trained, they're practicing on your customer that you just spent $500 in ads to get there for them to practice on. Now, I don't know about you, but that makes absolutely no sense to me.
There you go.
I don't know.
Right? Makes sense, right?
It's the first line of defense. It's the first person they talk to is the CSR.
Right.
Why would you not focus on that person? It doesn't add up to me.
Right. Well, it makes a ton of sense, right? You think about that, and some people don't even really think about or realize that it's the first person that somebody talks to, and they need to feel welcome. They need to have a great experience. I recently called a business, and it wasn't an HVAC business. It was it was another business. And after the phone call, I was like, man, that lady was a bitch. Like my first thoughts, I came off it. I mean, lucky I know the person that runs the business. So I was like, okay, well, if I was calling as a first-time customer, I probably would have canceled my appointment, because I thought that person was a bitch, and just off-putting, and like, hey, how's it going? Good. Oh, okay. Well, if I ask you how it's going, and you just say good, and it's simple and small shit that goes a long ways. So
you'd be appalled at some of the things that I've heard. You would be absolutely appalled.
Well, let's I'm kidding.
So this old guy calls this. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to say the company, but this old guy calls. You could tell he's just an old man, right? He's just a freaking old man, and it took him 4 times to finally get. So he called the first time. The lady said, "I'm going to put you on hold." She was rude as shit. Put him on hold. Actually hung up on him. Took him 4 more times to call back. So total 5.
Wow.
When he finally got her on the phone, he was like, "Look, I'm just calling because you guys are supposed to come out and do the maintenance on this thing, and I need your guy." It was. I'll just tell you, it was a sprinkler head, right? And he said, "You guys, your guy came out here, but he put the sprinkler head in the wrong spot, and it's puddling up my yard." And so the lady says, "Well, you gotta whatever the maintenance fee was for their program. We got a balance of $280 for your yearly maintenance fee. We're going to need to take that payment. And then come spring," this was winter, "come spring, when we come back out, we'll check that sprinkler head." He's like, "Well, wait a minute. So you want me to pay you for the job that you," and that's what it was. It wasn't a maintenance thing. Right. It was the job that they came out to do. He said, "You want me to pay you for the job?" And she was like, "Sir, you have to pay your bill. Like, I don't know why you're trying to get out of paying your bill. Like, we came out and did the job. I'm looking at the technician. The technician said he did the job. I don't know what the problem is." It was fucking horrendous. Right. It was like, I felt uncomfortable, and I was nowhere near the call. Right? It was so uncomfortable. Dude. And he made her pay. She made the guy pay.
Before you even go and say, the job, and he probably wasn't even fighting the bill, right?
No, 100% wasn't fighting it.
Customer service goes a long way. Customer service. Let's put this before we wrap up with our final question. When somebody calls a heating and cooling company specifically, because that's what our show is HVAC Revealed, chances are really high that their AC or their furnace is broken and they're uncomfortable and they're in an emergency situation, chances are high, right? There are other things where they might be calling for a tune-up or for a maintenance or for a quote on a system, but by and large, most times their shit's broken. And if you're rude as fuck to them, they're going to look elsewhere because they are in pain, because it could be minus fucking cold in Canada and their furnace isn't working, or plus hot in Florida and they're sweating their balls off. Be a human and be kind when they call you.
That's the second thing. That might have been the first thing I really should have said, is be empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And then empathetic, what I mean by empathetic is you got to be able to read, you got to be able to understand how that person's feeling on the other end of the line. Because Here's what I'll tell you. Most people don't ever have to call an HVAC company but one time. Mm-hmm. And so they don't know what they're doing. They're calling the big bad contractor that's going to rip them off, right? That's what they think when they're calling you. So they already don't like you. And that's why. It's not your fault. But you have to overcome that by being empathetic. And empathetic means that you're understanding if their ass is on fire or if it's not really a problem.
Right.
And so you got to handle that accordingly, because if you don't, you're probably going to lose that customer. And like you said, dude, that could be an expensive sale that you just lost.
Right. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Let's see if I can help you out and get that fixed for you.
Oh my God. Oh, don't ever say you're sorry. Wow, what are you sorry? Like, what are you sorry for? You didn't create this problem. That language pattern, it sets a negative tone. I'm sorry, I get amped up about that.
No, it's good, because that's what a lot of people say, right? That, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you, right?
Yeah.
And it, like, people say, oh, I'm so sorry that. I'm like, well, why are you sorry? It didn't happen to me, right? You're like, it's not your control.
Right. And look, if somebody calls and they're irate, it's really easy just to say, hey, Mr. Jones, if we could just slow down really quick, let's just slow down. Let me get your information, because I want to get you to the right person. That's all you have to say. You don't have to get amped up with them, because eventually, if you keep talking like I'm talking to you, your tone will come down to my tone. Because if my tone stays here, you have to come down, right? You're not going to stay screaming at me. And so emotional intelligence is what I'm talking about here, which it just means that you're paying attention to the other person on the other line, and active listening. That'd be the third thing I would say. And I can tell you about that if we have a second.
Oh yeah, we got time.
So it's super important for your CSRs to not they don't need to be reading what they're getting ready to say. Now, I understand why some people may think that'd be beneficial, so they're prepared and all that good stuff. But the truth of the matter is, you're leaving the customer out to dry when you do that, because they're telling you about this the first time they've ever called an HVAC company, and their ass is on fire, their baby's in the crying, screaming, crying, and like you said, hot or cold, and you're reading a script about what you need to say next, and you answer it completely wrong. It's going to go sideways. And so active listening means that you're listening to what I'm saying while I'm saying it, and then respond, not thinking about or reading about what you're going to say after I get done talking. Right?
Yep.
Super important.
Well, a lot of people are like that. They're trying to think of, well, what am I going to say next, right? Instead of actually listening to the person. I mean, we're guilty on our podcast all the time, because usually I'm trying to I'm trying to active listen, but I also know that I need to try to guide the conversation and steer to where we want to get to. I mean, you host a podcast, you know what that's like. And so it's tough on a podcast, but it's tough for people to do. But if you actually sit there and practice empathetic listening, it'll be absolutely wonderful, because you're actually going to understand and hear what they're saying. You're going to be present. You're going to be in that moment.
Right. I mean, what else do you have to do? Right.
Right. Yep. And emotional intelligence is also a big one. EQ, emotional intelligence 2.0. Travis Bradbury, I believe, is the author of that book. Phenomenal. It opened up my eyes to some of my stuff in one of my early leadership roles, of some things like how you can just sabotage people without even knowing you're sabotaging people because of how you are. And how your characteristics are. But when you realize that, you recognize that, you got a lot of power in that.
If you do something about it.
Right. We've covered a lot. Yeah, you have to do something.
You got to do something about it.
Right. I forget the exact word. Evan's more so the quote person. I'm the one that doesn't. I don't get the quotes. I always mess them up. But you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't take action with the knowledge, you're never going to execute on anything. Right. Knowledge is. They say knowledge is power, but executing on knowledge is the greatness.
Knowledge is free.
Yes.
Right. Knowledge is free.
Yeah.
Execution is not.
Right. Google.com. What do you need to know? You can find it, right? Well, you think about this, like if you take 100 people in the room and you tell each person the one thing that they could do to radically shift and change their business overnight, you know what 95% of them are going to do? Not that one thing. You know what those 5 people are going to do? They're going to go do it. Guess what those 5 people are going to do anyways? They're going to find, they would have found the answer out anyways, right? So you might as well give them the information. So, well, all right, wrapping up. We covered a lot of ground today. We do have one final question, but before we do, if you want to get in touch with Corey, CoreyBerrier.com is their website. You can check them out. He has his podcast, successfullifepodcast.com. If you want to reach out to him via email, Corey@CoreyBerrier.com. These, of course, will be in our show notes for later, so you don't have to go too terribly far. Also, he has his book. I'm not going to put the link. It's a long one, but you can find that on his website, CoreyBerrier.com. It'll link directly to his book on Amazon from that. So, Corey, I know you tried to... You're going to say something?
I did. I do. I totally forgot to tell you. Like I'm speaking at Podfest next week,
nice.
And it's virtual. And then I have a pre-recorded slot in a different time slot. So I would encourage people to go check that out. Podfestexpo.com, I believe. I'll get that for you.
Well, let's find out. Yes, podfestexpo.com. So there we go.
Yes.
So I won't have time to put that onto a banner, but we'll hopefully get that into the show notes for later. So I know you tried to, you know that you've watched a lot of episodes. You know we have a last question, so it's the same thing, and you forgot what it was, but you tried to ask me before the show, and I'm like, nope, not going to say it. So we have one final question here for you, Corey. What is one question that you wish people would ask you more, but don't?
Oh, man. I would say that is a really good question. See, this is why I wanted you to tell me the question.
All the fun.
I would say maybe, I guess it'd probably be around how to get sober. I think that would be the question that would probably make the most impact. And
sure,
it seems like a really simple thing, but most people don't ask, right? Most people don't share when they're struggling, as we talked about earlier. So I think I'm an open book, and I think asking that question would move people along. And if you want me to share my experience with you personally, I'm totally cool with that. That was the answer. Did I lose you? Did I lose you? Maybe. Did we lose?
Sure. I believe my internet is a shitty timing of going out on me. So bad timing. Hopefully it resolves itself here shortly. But the question and hopefully you can hear me, and hopefully everybody can still hear me with it. So actually, let's just pause to see if my internet figures its life out. Man,
it's so close. Well, I guess it's just me now, if we're still live. It's kind of odd. You don't hear by myself, huh? All right. Well, I'm assuming he's going to be back. All right. Yeah, I guess it's internet. Boy, this is freaking wild that I'm sitting here live on the Two Host Podcast without the 2 O's. But I guess we'll just roll with it, right? He'll be back in a moment. I guess he was going to ask me about the sober question again, potentially. I don't know. And I don't really know if he wants me to keep this thing open. Like, we did not map this part out in the process. I'll just tell you. But I believe if it works like my StreamYard, I'm certain he'll be back in a moment. And so I will just wing it until he gets back. Jesus Christ, we've talked about a million different things, so I'm not really sure what it is I should talk about other than, I don't know. Definitely go check out the Podfest videos. And I will tell you, I'll just use this as a quick plug. Go vote on the video, and I will post that information in just a minute on Facebook. So definitely go in there and vote on that video because it gets shown to every single person that's ever attended a Podfest globally if I win the top 10. So help me do that. Well, that worked out, I guess. There, maybe.
All right.
All right.
Oh, my camera's the wrong way. I have no audio. And so I don't even know how to change this. So I don't know if you can hear me, Corey,
Yeah.
but my internet went out. So
I can hear you.
I don't know if you've covered ground on that, but I'm trying to figure this out because settings, there we go, camera, facing front, there we go. So hopefully that works out. My internet crapped out, but again, I have no sound, so all good. I know that, Corey, you were chatting, your last question there was about, how do you get sober, right? And I thought we taught a lot about that, and it was very well rounded out, but I do want to fully ask that question, how does somebody get sober?
I would say take the first step and just check out a meeting. That's what I would do. I don't know another way because that's how I did it. I can just tell you how I did it, and that's how I did it. I forced myself to go to a meeting. I did not say a word when I went in. I felt extremely uncomfortable. I felt out of place. This was not the place I needed to be. I was not one of these people. I had not slept under a bridge, right? All the things that we think an alcoholic is. And the truth of the matter is we have two. Oh, that's pretty cool. So yeah, everything that we've been taught about how, what an alcoholic is, just throw that out the window, right? Because you don't even know when people are alcoholics or not, because it's so easy to hide. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, there you go.
No, that's a big thing, right? And so, the hidden alcoholic, right? And people are like, well, I don't have a problem. Okay, well, how many beers did you have last night? Oh, you crushed a 6-pack by yourself? Well, maybe you might want to look at something, right? And there's times where you let loose and you have some fun, but going back to what's your relationship with it, right? And what's it look like? How are you going about it? So all great things that need to be to know and be important about, right? Sorry, my getting thrown for a loop here with shitty internet. Especially when you're solo with it, and I had to dive in onto the phone. So
hilarious. I held tight. I held the screen while you were gone.
You know what? I figured being a podcast guest yourself, and I saw one of the comments in the private chat, from some of our team, probably help you out with prompting that along with some of those things. But so
I didn't even see that. Oh, I was talking about Podfest.
Right. So
yeah, I did. I did.
Yeah, you've got it covered. You're good to go. And I forget where it's going to go. One of the things that a lot of people are talking about lately is just the added benefits of not drinking, or the added benefits of not drinking as much. And you look at even Health Canada here. I mean, they recently went from 1 a day is okay to like 1 a week. In terms of the benefits, but. What are some of the health benefits that you felt and you found by not having alcohol in your life anymore?
Well, I'm 45 years old. I'm 9% body fat. So I don't have to, I don't say that like egotistically, but like, I don't have to worry about all those extra calories.
Right.
So that's a big thing, right? Sugar, just so everybody knows, the reason you detox when you stop drinking is because of the lack of sugar in your body. So that is a great tip for everybody. If you decide you're going to stop drinking, first of all, don't do it on your own. Secondly, if you decide to be hard-headed, like a lot of people are, and do it on your own, make sure you got a ton of sugar around, because that'll mitigate the shakes, the DTs. It's almost like it's a bridge, right? And so I don't know if that answered your question. I went off again.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I mean, and I was reading somebody's post the other day in terms of like his mental clarity. That's his big one, right? I mean, fitness is a big one. I was having this conversation walking the dog actually at the dog park with somebody, and we were just talking about, alcohol, right? And just what's the relationship like. And when you don't drink that much, now you've reduced your inflammation, you feel better, you have mental clarity, you're stronger, you don't get as sick as often because your immune system isn't compromised and depressed. Like it goes on and on and on. So.
It does. Yeah. There's a million reasons why it can make your life easier if you have a problem. Look, we're not talking about somebody that just drinks moderately. We're not talking about somebody that doesn't have a problem. Like have at it. Trust me. Like every alcoholic would love to be able to drink just normally, but it just doesn't work out for us, right? It's just not going to work. Right. So yeah, 100%, dude. And guess what? You can remember every single morning when you wake up, you know exactly what you did the day before. Every single morning. That's a huge plus.
Well, and that goes back to that. What's your relationship with it? Right. That's the big thing, right? Can you be one of those people that has a glass of red wine every now and again with dinner and be okay? Right. If you're not, then take Corey up on his offer. Go to a meeting, check it out. Go check out Twitter Spaces. Do those sorts of things. So, Corey, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today, or me today, I guess. There's no us. It's just Corey and Thaddeus having a conversation, dealing with my loss of internet at the end of the show, which, you know what, we live in 2023 and that's our reality. Sometimes internet craps out. Thank you for covering on that. Thank you for being raw, real, and vulnerable as well. I very much appreciate that from the conversation today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, my friend.
And until next time, we'll cheers our waters. Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, two quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of the show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until